Joshua Sparks.
And I'm Parker Tracy, and this is CAVS News.
From the studios of Chillicothe High School, this is your CAVS News Show.
Other than prom coming up very soon, so is the air test, and it is coming faster than you think. Around the 20th, your teachers will be tying up the most current unit and preparing students for their respective air test. But if you're feeling so down about the test, remember, if you think you can or can't, you're right. Now, another thing that is coming up is Hall Talk with Maggie Deddy.
My favorite thing about spring is the weather.
My favorite thing about spring is track season.
My favorite thing about spring is being able to go outside and drive with the windows down.
My favorite thing about spring is how it's like not too hot, but it's also not too cold. It's just like moderate temperature. It's nice.
My favorite thing about spring is baseball.
My favorite thing about spring is all the flowers growing and leaves on the trees, and it just looks really pretty.
My favorite thing about spring is the warm weather.
My favorite thing about spring is all of the very pretty flowers.
In other news, poverty is still a major problem within Ross County. The poverty rate affects 1 in 5 people in the county currently and is continuing to increase. The Ohio Poverty Report shows that the current percentage for Ross County is at 19.4%, and several surrounding counties are not faring well either, with Pike at 24.2%, Highland at 20.3%, Jackson at 23.6%, and Vinton at 22.7%. All above are the state average of 15.9%. In fact, nearly 1/3 of all children in Ross County are living in families that are within the poverty threshold. However, the Community Visioning Team has been creating a plan for the community to help combat these issues in the future, and are planning to have a draft of the plan available for public review in mid-May. I bet you didn't know how bad it was getting. But for more things you may not know, here's Ryan Kincaid with Did You Know?
Howdy folks, welcome to Did You Know? I'm Ryan Kincaid, and I lost my voice the day before, so apologies in advance for my rough voice. Anyways, let's get on to business. I'm back to talk about the only thing that's more complicated than nuclear sciences. That's right, it's the European Union. How hard could this possibly be? Well, let's find out. The European Union is, surprisingly, a union of several European countries. They are, in decreasing number of population, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, Poland, Romania, the Netherlands, aka Holland, Greece, Belgium, Portugal, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Sweden, Austria, Bulgaria, Denmark, Slovakia, Finland, Ireland, Croatia, Lithuania, Latvia, Slovenia, Estonia, Cyprus, Luxembourg, Malta, and a partridge in a pear tree. Now, there are other countries that are trying to become EU members, but for time's sake, let's move on. Here's some 3 simple facts about the EU you need to know. Rule 1, countries pay membership dues. Rule 2, countries vote on EU laws that they all must follow. And Rule 3, citizens of EU countries are automatically EU citizens, meaning they can live in any EU country they want to. Now, we aren't just finished yet. All 3 of these have very complicated asterisks attached to them. First, Iceland, Norway, and Liechtenstein, who are not part of the EU, can also live in any EU country they choose, and vice versa. In order for this to work, these 3 countries have to pay membership fees to the EU, even though they're not a part of it, and thus have no say in the EU's lawmaking. This is known as the European Economic Area, and while this might sound like a bad idea, the EU doesn't have full control over these countries. For example, fishing, Iceland's biggest moneymaker, is not regulated by the EU, allowing Iceland to handle its own fishing industry. With the regular EU and the EEA, the whole continent looks covered except for one big hole, Switzerland, which has remained fiercely neutral for hundreds of years, but she still participates in the EU's Schengen area. This is what allows Rule 3 to take place, as it requires all EU countries to have open borders to all EU citizens. One notable exception is a Belgian town, where the border between Belgium and the Netherlands literally passes through somebody's bedroom. However, not all countries participate in the Schengen area, most notably the UK. So to pass through London, you need a valid reason. Now, let's talk about money. The EU has a standard currency, the euro, used by most EU countries, but not all. This is called the Eurozone, and in order to have access, your country must check off certain economic goals. When most countries join the Eurozone, they ditch their local currency, but Denmark, Sweden, and, you guessed it, the United Kingdom, all still hold on to their currencies, the krone and the pound sterling respectively. Also, 4 tiny countries, Andorra, San Marino, Monaco, and the Vatican, have the right to use euros as their currency while not being EU countries. Now, we've got one last complication to talk about: empire. As you all know, Europe loves empires, and many countries still hold on to land from the good old imperial days, known as overseas territories. Even though these territories stretch out the EU across the globe, they are part of the EU through their colonial masters, so citizens of territories can live anywhere in any EU country, but other EU citizens can't live in these territories. Now, there are way more complicated layers to the EU that are even more complicated than this, but I'm afraid I'm all out of time. I'm Ryan Kincaid. Now let's send it back to Josh and
Thanks,
Parker.
Ryan. High schoolers, be prepared because prom is coming up soon. Here's some important information that you may need for this special occasion. The theme of this year's prom is Arabian Nights. The tickets for prom will go on sale on April 18th and prices will be announced soon. Prom will take place on April 30th in the cafeteria. The lineup for the Grand March will start at 7 and begin the Grand March at 7:30, and prom will commence at 9 and last until 12. Just a friendly reminder, formal attire is required and all normal CHS dance rules must be obeyed. All of this news is great, but we haven't had anything involving sports yet. So, here's sports with Taylor Boggs.
Thanks guys, I'm Taylor Boggs with this week's CAVS News Sports Update. Spring sports are in full swing with games and meets happening almost every day. First we have boys varsity baseball who defeated Greenfield McLean on Monday, April 4th with a final score of 14-3. Leading players in this game were seniors Jeff Webb and Gage Jones. Next up we have girls JV softball who also defeated Greenfield McLean on Monday with a final score of 32-13. Last 2 games, the girls had dominated the other teams by more than 15 runs. Varsity softball took the win as well against McLean with a final score of 6-5. Sabrina Beekman scored 3 runs and Olivia Ray pitched 7 innings with 7 strikeouts. The boys tennis team had a clean sweep over East Clinton on Wednesday, April 6th with a final score of 5-0. And finally, the track team competed in a dual meet against Circleville on Tuesday, April 5th. The boys track team took 2nd place and the girls took 1st. For more results and upcoming events, log on to the Chillicothe City School website and click on Athletics. Well, that's all I have for this week. I'm Taylor Boggs, so back to Josh and Parker in the studio.
Thanks, guys. On April 1st in Fresno, California, police were in pursuit of an SUV when it got onto a Navy air base and crashed into an F-18 Super Hornet, killing the passenger in the vehicle as well as injuring the driver, who later died in the hospital. The station's commander, Captain Monty Ashleman, is unsure as to how the vehicle made it through the base security, since all of the guard posts were fully manned at the time, and there were measures set up meant to counter such a thing from happening. However, he has confirmed that it was not a targeted attack and is trying to find out exactly how it happened to prevent further incidents from occurring. That sounds like a scene straight out of a movie, but if you want to hear more about movies, here's Jason Adkins with Pop Fusion.
Hey guys, it's me, the one, the only Jason Adkins. It seems to survive the last attack, and it seems that Parker is gone for now. If you didn't see what happened last week, well, let me show you a few clips.
Why, Parker? Why?
Know your role and shut your mouth, jabroni! In some pop culture news, Star Wars The Force Awakens came out on April 5th for Blu-ray and digital download. The games we're going over this week are Quantum Break, Dark Souls 3, and Tales from the Borderlands. Our first game, Quantum Break, revolves around the story of Jack Joyce, who is the result of a time machine experiment gone wrong. Jack has the power to manipulate time. He has many special time abilities, and he can use also regular firearms like normal people. The game is played in segments, and after you complete the segment, you get to watch a digital show. The second main character, Paul Serenay, was also altered by the experiment. Paul has the ability to see into the future. You get to play as both of the characters in the game. You play as Jack in the game and Paul in the show. This game was released on April 5th and is for Xbox One and Microsoft Windows. Our next game is Dark Souls 3. According to the maker of the game, Dark Souls 3 will be very similar to Dark Souls 2. The Dark Souls series is a role-playing game. The player will be equipped with a variety of weapons and you're able to use magic. Let me put it this way. The game is like the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, but it's just a much harder version of it. The game was released in March for Japan, but it will be released sometime this month for the world. Our last game is Tales from the Borderland. This game is a point-and-click game released by Telltale Games. The game takes place after the events of Borderlands 2. The story is about two people, Fiona and Bryce, a con artist and an employee from Hyperion working together to try and get into the vault. The game will be available for most of the devices known to date, including mobile devices. So, now that we're done with our games, let's go into the top 5 songs of the week. If you want to see the top 100, then you go to Billboard.com. At number 5, we have Love Yourself by Justin Bieber. Number 4, we have Pillow Talk by Zayn. Number 3, we have No by Meghan Trainor. Number 2, we have 7 Years by Lucas Graham. And number 1, we have Work by Rihanna featuring Drake. So now on to the movies. Our movies this week are Hardcore Henry, Meet the Blacks, and our last movie is Divergent, Allegiant. So our first movie, Hardcore Henry, is about a man who wakes up in a Moscow laboratory to discover that he has been brought back to life as a half-human, half-robot hybrid who can't remember anything about his past. In the lab, he meets a woman who says that she is his wife, and his name is Henry. But before she can activate his voice, men storm the lab and kidnap the woman. As Henry starts to understand his new abilities, he embarks on a bloody rampage through the city to save his spouse from a psychopath who plans to destroy the world. One thing about this movie is that it is entirely in a first-person perspective and only shot on GoPro. This movie came out on the 8th. Our second movie is Meet the Blacks. When some unexpected money comes his way, Carl Black, played by Mike Epps, moves his family from a cold and windy Chicago to sunny and nice Beverly Hills. As the Blacks start to settle in their new home, they start to notice some strange behavior. As night approaches, President Obama, played by George Lopez, announces that the annual purge is about to start. As the purge starts, Carl's wife starts questioning him on the money. And during the night, the man who he got it from shows up at his door wanting it back. Carl and his loved ones must now survive the night until it ends. The movie comes out on April 29th. Our last movie is Divergent, Allegiant. Triss, played by Shailene Woodley, and Four, played by Theo James, venture outside the wall that encases Chicago. Outside, they discover old truths that render old discoveries meaningless. As a ruthless battle threatens humanity, Triss and Four must make decisions on who to trust to survive. Triss must ultimately make decisions about courage, allegiance, sacrifice, and love. This movie came out on March 18th. Well, guys, that's all the time I have this week. Oh no, I think I hear Parker coming. I gotta get out of here, guys. Well, I'm listening to Back to the Anchors. I'm Jason Atkins, and this is Pop Fusion.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. I'm Joshua Sparks.
And I'm Parker Tracy.
Have a safe weekend, Chillicothe.